Hello and welcome to In the Cool of the Day and today's segment of Lay to Rest, Live Well, End Well. I'm your host, Ruth Pegaron, and I have a special show for you today. Why do funerals cost so much? Funerals are the third largest purchase for most people, and for some, it's the fourth largest purchase. The other large expenses are homes, cars, medical expenses. The difference is no one wants to spend $1 on a funeral, let alone $10,000. It is the only thing we must all do and the least common topic to talk about, and certainly not what people want to think about. It is much more pleasant and enjoyable to talk about your next home purchase or your car purchase. So today I want to share with you some national statistics and give you some insight into the cost of funerals. While the prices of many goods and services are increasing rapidly, the cost of a funeral is not growing as fast as the rate of inflation. The NFDA, which is the National Funerals Directors Association, is the world's leading and largest funeral service association, serving more than 20,000 individual members who represent nearly 11,000 funeral homes in the United States and 49 countries around the world. NFDA is the trusted leader, beacon for ethics, and the strongest advocate for the profession. As you can see, we have a graphic with the representation. According to the 2021 National Funeral Directors Association Member General Price List study, the median cost of a funeral has increased only 6.6% over the past 5 years to $7,848. And the median cost of a funeral with cremation has increased 11.3% over the past 5 years to $6,970. So the overall rate of inflation was 13.98% for the same period. The NFDA 2021 statistic does not have a specific statistic for Northern Virginia, DC, or Maryland. However, based on the cost of living in the area, we would guess that we are on the higher end in this market. That cost, where does it come from? Well, let me help you understand a little bit of where the costs come from. That cost includes the basic services of a funeral professional, a funeral director, and the funeral establishment must offer 3 basic services: recovery of the loved one from a home, hospital, or hospice care and into the funeral home's care at any time, on any day. 24-hour operation is for funeral homes. Caring for your loved one once they're in their care, the minimum care of refrigeration or just continuous care of embalming, hair, makeup, dressing, any type of cosmetizing, and placing the loved one in the casket. The costs also include the funeral directors and their staff's compensation for their time and skill. For those of you that don't know, it is a profession that does require licensing. Access to the funeral home's amenities, including chapels, visitation rooms, reception areas, and more. Securing necessary permits for travel if it's outside of the lines of the county or the state in which the person has died. Also, filing the death certificates. Basic printed materials, such as a very basic funeral program or a registry book. Use of any mortuary transportation if needed. Coordination of clergy or celebrants. The funeral home also does coordination and placement of funeral flowers and/or any charity or donations. Coordination of an online or newspaper obituary. Other costs that are added to the funeral experience that many consider when celebrating the life of themselves or a loved one. These costs that I'm going to review, these are if someone is planning ahead of time or if they're planning when a death has occurred. Some of these costs are not necessarily a funeral cost. The ones I mentioned earlier are the basics that go into a funeral home's cost, and usually the basics of what every family needs, especially the filing of death certificate paperwork, caring for the loved one, picking them up, bringing them in their care, having refrigeration. Those things, everyone that passes away will have that cost. The other list that I'm getting ready to go through, these are things that people choose to have depending on their tradition, their family tradition, their religion, and their choice. And these are the things that also contribute to the cost of a funeral. So yes, there is a funeral home expense to care for the loved one, but there's also the family or next of kin's choices, or the person themselves, of how they want to have their legacy remembered. So I'm just going to review those. One is if you have a clergy member or funeral celebrant. Often a pastor, priest, or other religious affiliate will conduct a funeral service. However, even families who enlist a member of the clergy to lead the service may also want to use a funeral celebrant. They're specially trained to help a family incorporate personal details into every aspect of a memorial or funeral service. The services of clergy members and funeral celebrants typically run a few $100s. Limousines. The procession in a traditional funeral could mean having vehicles for the family to be all together behind the hearse. That could be one limousine or it could be many. An alternative location. Today, people are hosting celebration of life services that are beautiful, and they're hosting them in places that are more fitting of the loved one that they lost, more of their lifestyle. I was a celebrant recently at a wedding venue. The family chose that location because it was where they were married and last remembered how happy their loved one was that day. They wanted a place to remember him happily. I asked the event manager what made her decide to allow the memorial to take place, since it was a wedding venue. The event manager responded at the location and she said, "We usually do weddings and parties, but the date was open when they called, so we said, why not? Why not to a memorial service?" So some go to restaurants, country clubs, American Legion, family backyards, or other natural outdoor areas for funerals and memorials. The location is always very fitting to where the family would like to host or where their loved one would be best remembered, where their legacy can live on. It's no longer that a funeral or a memorial service is held in a church or in a place of worship of any kind. Now the market is open for anywhere you want to host one. So the venue could add to the cost of the funeral. Catering. The repast is, there's food after a funeral, which is a long-standing tradition for many cultures. Then there's musicians, whether a single musician, such as a harp player for the chapel or a bagpiper for a graveside, or an entire band for a catered reception. Musicians make an impact at a funeral or a memorial. Prices start in the hundreds and can range into the thousands. Caskets and urns. The cost of a traditional casket varies widely. You can pay a few $100s for a cardboard container used during a cremation, or many thousands for a high-quality metal or handcrafted wood casket with personal touches. Now with caskets, you can also get something called veneer wood. So it's not totally wood. That impacts the cost as well. There are also solid bronze caskets. I have a client who recently reached out and asked, he showed me a picture of something he saw, and the casket, and he's considering it for when his grandmother passes. The casket itself is $30,000, but he wants her in something of that stature based on her life. So it can range whatever you would want when it comes to a casket as well. So it's up to you what you would choose to do. But that does add to the cost of your funeral. So it's all choice of what goes into a funeral to make the loved one remembered as they would want to be remembered. Cremation urns, they come also in many shapes and sizes. Urn prices reflect size, material, and design. The other things with urns, that includes engraving. A lot of loved ones would like to have the urns engraved. So that also adds additional expenses. Printed materials, funeral programs, register books are very commonplace. Keepsake bookmarks and personalized stationery are other options. Printing contributes to the cost of a funeral as well. Oftentimes, people make portraits also of the loved one to have at the memorial service. Those are also adding to the cost. All of the decorations that goes into a funeral or a memorial service could include a lot of printing expense as well. An obituary. A newspaper may charge to run an obituary, but an online obituary is free as a free service. Most funeral homes associate can't even help you create one if you do not know what to write. Flowers. Flowers and a funeral go together. They are part of the typical funeral cost. No matter if it's a cremation or a burial, flowers help in the funeral experience. They add to the experience. They are beautiful. They are comforting. And the kinds of flowers and the types and sizes of arrangement inform the total price, which can run from several $100s into the thousands. Funeral keepsakes. Funeral keepsakes, movies, slideshows. I said portraits earlier, that's also a keepsake. Blankets, mini cremation urns, and more make heartfelt keepsakes for family members. One of my absolute favorites that families really enjoy, and I'm learning more and more that this is something to offer every family, and that is the touch of the fingertip. So there's jewelry, keepsake jewelry that you can have your loved one's fingerprint stamped on. So a funeral home would take the fingerprint, and then you can have it added to a necklace, a dog chain. There's even things for men, cufflinks, lighters, knives. So I'm learning more and more that keepsake adds a very special value as well. Also with the fingerprints, you can get miniature urns. So some of your loved ones' cremated remains can also be added. So you have a little bit of their cremated remains as well as their fingerprint, which really helps with the comforting of the grieving process in the years to come. Funeral favors, such as personalized golf balls, key rings, or boxes of cookies made from a special recipe, are a modern day way to celebrate life as well. Jewelry continues with cremation jewelry and other charms of remembrance are lasting ways to keep the memory of a loved one near. They can also be passed down for generations. These types of keepsakes can be inexpensive or costly, depending on your choice. Whether you're going to be cremated or buried and going to a cemetery, that cost is also added to the funeral experience. It is time for a break. I will return after these important messages.
He's the face of our future, tutoring and mentoring tomorrow's leaders. She's the face of hope, helping communities recover from devastating disasters. He's the face of independence, making sure that those who need assistance can remain in their own homes. These are the faces of experience, making a difference for generations. This is Senior Corps. Visit nationalservice.gov. This message brought to you by the Corporation for National and Community Service.
I think it goes around.
Come on, buddy.
I'm here for you.
Oh, it's gonna be great. Look, look.
Why is this so hard?
Let's go. We gotta get you in practice.
I read it. Look, and it said.
Grandpa, look what I got. Let me see.
Oh, Dad, wait till you see the bike we got for Jake.
Hearing loss happens gradually with age, making it easy to ignore. Yet most older Americans aren't getting their hearing tested. Untreated hearing loss can keep your loved ones from enjoying what they cherish most.
Dad, can you hear me?
Don't let that happen. Speak up about hearing loss. You'll be glad you did.
This is our friend and colleague, Donna. She has liver disease. She planned to present this message herself, but she can't because she's in the hospital. We can change this. We can help people like Donna remain active mothers, loving friends, and productive members of society. But we need to work together and contribute our part of the story to medical research.
It's ironic because that's what Donna planned to talk about. People like you know what it's like firsthand when a doctor gives you a scary diagnosis. When that happens, you want to know all of your options.
But the information online is overwhelming. That's why we've been working on a solution. Rather than struggling to find the researchers and support organizations focused on your condition, you make it possible for these professionals to find you instead. You simply answer a few questions about yourself and your health, and then you decide how much of that information you're willing to share, to whom, and for what purpose.
Please join us at Registries for All, regforall.org.
There's no one more deserving of our thanks than our nation's veterans. So when a veteran's dealing with an injury or health problem, it's a privilege to help and support them in their recuperation. Help Hospitalized Veterans has found a unique way to do just that. They pioneered the use of arts and craft kits as a therapeutic tool. HHV provides these kits to veterans to use in their homes at no charge. The kits can aid physical rehabilitation, and they're also a valuable tool to help veterans with PTSD. They provide a creative outlet, relieve stress, and they also remind our veterans that there are plenty of folks who really care about them and want to thank them for their service. In some areas, veterans can use the kits in the company of other veterans at local community craft centers. If you're a veteran receiving health care anywhere, call this number to receive your free kit or visit hhv.org to learn more. Thank you.
Welcome back. You are watching In the Cool of the Day in today's segment of Lay to Rest, Live Well, End Well. Prior to the break, I was discussing why do funerals cost so much? Almost like any other event you plan, from anniversaries, birthdays, graduations, and weddings, a funeral requires a great deal of effort to organize. But it often happens in a very short amount of time. It is no small feat to bring a large group of people together to remember and celebrate in a day or two, or even in a week's time. Few would attempt to plan a wedding in less than a week. But the very thing that go into wedding planning are all a part of funeral planning. And for the funeral professionals that do the funeral planning and the directors that help you, They're often helping several families at one time. But our profession and our training teaches us to never, ever let you feel that. So that's why we dedicate ourselves to our families at that time. And we dedicate ourselves with our families, and we help them with every step of the way. And we allow them to lead the way, from announcements, flowers, catering, music, transportation, finding the right venue, speeches. I would just like to say, when we talk about speeches, and every funeral, we talked earlier about clergy, but there's often times that people want to come that was a part of the loved one's life that have passed, whether it's family, friends, work professionals that they have encountered along the way. All of these people come together to present their story of the loved one. So coordinating all of those people, the funeral home, funeral director, or funeral professional helps you with all that along the way. They help you with the program. How should it flow? Picture slideshows, videos, videoing the event, videos to play at the event. Videos, this is event planning at its best, folks. Not to mention completing paperwork for death certificates and obtaining permits for transportation, burial, or cremation. The expectations are high. The emotions are higher. And the emotions during this time are very sad. No one wants to come to a funeral home or to have to call a funeral professional and to say that a loved one has passed or is passing. So we understand in our industry that we are not the people you want to see. It's a lifetime that is filled with many experiences, lots of special relationships with family and friends, included too are often the education and career successes, all in which a funeral captures for those left behind. There's a lot of value in a funeral professional being able to coordinate all those parts while comforting a family who is experiencing one of the worst times of their life. In fact, when it's done well and right, with attention to the detail, and in a manner that seems effortless, the goal of a funeral professional every day is to do what the family wants, to remember their loved one on their way. The funeral professional always also has a responsibility to the family to cater to all of the traditions that they choose. It's a very, very selfless profession, and a profession that does not put their own experience into your experience. So planning a funeral, why does it cost so much? Those are some of the things that go into it from a standpoint of, yes, all of the documentation side, but most importantly, picking the right professional, the right venue, the right story that you want to tell for your loved one. And that's why a funeral could cost so much in many people's eyes. But is it really that much when you're honoring a loved one? You can ask yourself that as you're planning yours, or if you ever get the misfortune to have to help someone plan theirs. Well, it's that time. Again, if you have any questions about today's segment, please see the information scrolling below. You have been watching In the Cool of the Day, and today's segment of Lay to Rest, Live Well, End Well. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.